Well, everyone, welcome back. So today I want to talk about this article from ggrecon.com. As you can see, the title says the Division 2 dev on descent modes, endgame changes and more. And this is kind of like an interview they had with Yannick, the creative director for the Division 2. I'm sure that everyone knows who Yannick is. And it's actually a pretty interesting article. It's talking about descent mode, other stuff as well. Because I read through it briefly, but it sounds to me as though descent mode could have possibly been survival 2.0 at some stage, but it did change. So let's just go over the article. I'll read through it, guys, and we'll just see what's going on. Plus, it does talk about Endgame, and that is an article that I do want to... I might even make a separate video on, but I may talk about it in today's video because they do mention it here. So let's just start off here. So it says, 2019 feels like an eternity ago with everything that's happened in between, but the Division 2 is 4 years old now, which is crazy. The third-person looter shooter has been updated with regular season content and events, but you'd be forgiven for not hearing too much about it unless you're regularly playing, which is very true. In fact, people that don't play the Division 2 that I talk to in real life or play the Division always say to me, is there still stuff going on in that game? Because you don't really hear a lot about it. As part of its Division Day celebration, however, Ubisoft has pulled back the curtain on another year of content drops for the title, and it looks to be the biggest set of updates since 2020's Warlords of New York expansion. We sat down with Yannick, creative director of the Division 2, to discuss why now was the right time to add a surprising new game mode. So it says, Division 2 dev reveals new descent mode details. Descent had been in development for quite some time, Yannick admits. It was always in our minds to create a roguelite mode like Descent, and in doing so we talked about what kind of experience we wanted our players to have. So when it came to creating Descent, I wanted to do something that had to do with power progression fantasy, and that's not something you can necessarily experience in the Division 2 today unless you create a new agent and go through the campaign all over again, which is true, because most people are at the end game, most people have their best builds already, so you do lose that kind of power progression. They've tried to add stuff into the game as opposed to in creating new levels like, expertise and all that sort of stuff, but overall you don't really get that as much. So that was the intent with Descent, to recreate that fantasy in a much more contained context. Speaking of players just starting out, the Division 2's Descent mode is for everyone, Yannick explains. Descent is for new players because a high-level character is not needed to jump in, but it's also for experienced players because they'll see things that I haven't seen in other aspects of the game, obviously referring to the way that you can combine talents in this mode that you wouldn't be able to do in outside of this mode. But as I said in my Descent review, it is for new players and for existing players. However, there needs to be checkpoints. Otherwise, new players, they won't last very long. It's also for competitive players who are going to try and top the leaderboards all the time. So this is a mode that allows us to offer different playstyles and fantasies. I've already seen people get to level 30, 40, level 100. So there's definitely going to be that kind of thing where people are going to try and top that leaderboard. But it does, unfortunately, I think it's all going to come down to how much time you have because of the lack of checkpoints. So hopefully they add checkpoints. Power up fantasy. That power climb in the Division 2 is at least usually defined by earning better gear to create builds. That's something that Descent mode does away with almost entirely. There's no loot in Descent. That's one of the major differences compared to the base game. There are only power-ups that you get when completing rooms, and those power-ups consist of talents that we take from gear that exists in the rest of the game but aren't connected to your gear. They are connected directly to your character, which means you can use any weapon you want and apply those talents to any of them. You don't have gear, you don't have ammo, you don't have chest pieces or knee pads, you'll only get power-ups that influence the playstyle. The thing about ammo, well, you do have ammo. You run out of it often. Well, you can do. That's what makes Descent very different compared to the main game. Here, we have a looter shooter without any loot in Descent. It's simply a choice of power-ups, and then they combine with each other. It certainly sounds very Hades, but Yannick wasn't given much away in terms of the influences in this mode. Roguelites are extremely popular now, and we see them everywhere, he admits. So when we discussed as a team, everyone came in with a different experience based on different references. That's what's been great about working together and developing this mode. As I said, the actual experience, the roguelike experience here for the Descent is great. The bones of Descent is great. Refer you back to my review of Descent. It needs some other stuff. So we'll have to wait and see what they do about that. Going rogue. Descent wasn't always intended to offer a roguelike experience, though. We didn't develop Descent with the intention of making a roguelike mode. We initially thought about creating a survival experience where you start with no gear and you have to grind for your gear within the mode, but as we worked and integrated on that mode, it slowly evolved to the roguelite style. The fact that roguelites are popular now didn't really make it easier for us to decide on making the mode. because at the time nobody really challenged us to make the mode anyway. So it could have been this mode, survival, where you collect gear and you get more powerful. That sounds to me like Survival 2.0, because it wasn't initially meant to be a roguelike experience. Is that something that you guys would have preferred? I can't say. I mean, having Survival 2.0 would be great. The rogue-like experience that we got here at Descent is something completely different. It is good, and I like it. Would I have preferred Survival? Maybe. I did love Survival from the Division 1. But a lot of that atmosphere that we got from Survivor in Division 1, we don't get in the Division 2. We don't have the snow, we don't have the storms really as much, or certainly not the same. So whether it would have worked in the Division 2 or not, I don't know. Will we get a Survival 2.0 in the future? Maybe. I mean, if they can create Descent, it's possible, but I'll have to wait and see. But yeah, I mean, it could have been Survival 2.0. Top to bottom, the Division franchise has never been afraid to mix things up, with the first game offering a series of expansions, including the survival mode that involved staying warm in its snowy New York setting. Division 2 has already added a summit mode with randomized areas as players climb 100 floors of a skyscraper. That looked nothing like a skyscraper inside. We asked if the arrival of Descent will affect the mode's future. I do expect these two modes to coexist because they each have different objectives, pointing to the mode's use of randomized rooms and custom builds. When it comes to Descent, it's very different in the sense that we are not randomizing the spaces. The configuration of the rooms is going to be the same. The surprise is not going to be the rooms, but what's going to populate those rooms and what you get out of completing that room. So it's very easy to draw similarities between the two modes because they are linear in terms of going from room to room, and you're trying to reach the end. But ultimately, they play differently because in Descent, you start with nothing, and you're going to use whatever you can find within that space. I will just add that Descent is way better than Summit already, and it's definitely got much better bones than the Summit had. So from what I've seen them do with the Summit, how they've added all this stuff over time, I expect the Descent to get similar treatment, if not more treatment, and I do expect Descent to actually be a really good mode eventually. I'm just not sure it's going to be there day one. I hope it is. At the moment, it's not quite there. As for the game's endgame, Ubisoft has revealed an overhaul is coming in later seasons of Year 5, Season 4 I think it is, and Yannick revealed a little about what players can expect. We want to restructure the endgame to make it more accessible and welcoming for new players, he said. We want an endgame where every activity makes sense and gives meaningful rewards that will contribute to your build, and playing seasons is going to have a big hand in achieving those goals. I'm not sure what this means, if I'm being honest with you. I've heard rumours. I mean, I can speculate that they're going to do something with the manhunts to change them up so that the way that we approach each manhunt with each season is completely different. And actually, with the rumours in my head, what he's saying about it being more accessible to new players actually makes sense. And the rumour I've heard, and I actually talked about this in a previous video, is that with each new season we get a fresh new character. We have to use that character with that season, and when you complete all those manhunt, then you take all that gear with you to your main character. And that would make sense to me because for new players, they can just fresh new character for each season, like everyone else, and they can build their way up. And that might be what happens. I don't know, but I'd love to hear your thoughts and feedback in the comments down below, and I may even do another video on that just to elaborate a little bit, but we'll have to, you have to let me know in the comments down below if that's something you want to see. And of course it says, the Descent mode arrives as part of the Broken Wings update in June of 2023 and is free to all players. So there we go, guys. Let me know what you think about this in the comments down below. Would you have preferred a Survival 2.0 or the Descent mode? If you've played Descent mode, then you might be able to give a better, kind of a more experienced opinion. But if you've seen the Descent mode and you've played Survival, then you'll probably have a good idea. I mean, Descent is very simple. It's not groundbreaking. It's not. There's not a lot of elements to it. So it's pretty easy to understand. Me personally, Survival, it's got a place in my heart. It really has. Survival 2.0 would have been amazing. Yeah, I don't know. I do like the Descent mode. It's not quite there yet. If it does get there, then yeah, I mean, I can see why Descent mode would have been better because it's not something we've never experienced before. Plus, it's open to everyone. I guess Survival 2.0 would have been the same. But it is a different experience. So I can see why they went that way. But yeah, that's it, guys. Thanks very much for watching. Until the next one, epic out.